So welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be running through a couple of things in relation to auction properties. Now, as you probably saw in that introduction of that live display auction, there was obviously a few mistakes there made by the prospective buyers. The main one being letting emotions take over in the auction house. That's something we don't want to be doing. So alongside that, and helping you not make that mistake, I'm also going to be discussing the following. And again, I'll make sure that all the timestamps are at the bottom as well, just in case you want to navigate to that particular place. So let's get down to it. The first is, what are property auctions? So as you probably know, thousands of properties are sold across the UK at auctions each and every year. And it's a very, very popular way for investors to grab a deal, or even for potential investors live their dreams of buying a rundown house to renovate it, flip it for that juicy profit that you often see on Homes Under the Hammer. Or at least they always seem to show. Now, some of the most common auction houses that you may be familiar with, or some that I've had dealings with myself, include. But alongside auctions being a hotspot for the public and investors to find deals, property auctions are also becoming a common route for investors to sell their properties too, which I'll explain in a moment, and it may surprise you why. But generally speaking, an auction, although each house has its own rules, and by house I mean auction house, not the actual houses that they're selling, they all have very similar structures. For example, they all have catalogues of houses they advertise prior to the auction date, provided by sellers who want to get rid of their houses, land or commercial stock. The auction house then lists these houses, land or commercial plots with a guide price, often ridiculously low, to entice buyer demand and interest in that auction and that particular lot. Now, a lot is a name given for the actual thing being sold. For example, if Bondwolf Auction House was selling 10 separate houses, they would each have an allocated lot ranging from 1 to 10. Common sense, right? Now, they also have a reserve price too. So it's very similar to when you list stuff on eBay, for example, which is basically the minimum price that has to be reached before an offer is accepted. Because the last thing you want to do is list a house for £1, only for someone to actually buy it for £1. Because the house won't get paid, i.e. the auction house, you won't get paid, and basically it just don't make no sense. So usually they'll have a minimum reserve price that they're willing to accept, but of course newbies won't always know this, and they'll often go in with the intention that they can get it for a couple of pounds, which obviously brings the whole excitement around an auction home up. The second bit, how to buy at a property auction. So basically, whatever auction house you choose to buy from or go ahead with, the procedure is generally quite similar. The only differences that may occur will be listed in the actual legal packs, or that auction house may have its own sort of rules and regulations in terms of the fees and the timescales they want stuff done by. So let's break it down in a few steps. The first, find it. Now, you can find auction properties that you're interested in either via the catalogues on that auction house's website, or just on your online portals like Zoopla and Rightmove. And these will be identified with guide prices. Next up, view it. View the property. Now, one of my first ever auction purchases took me over 100 viewings and rejections. And it was actually my 101st offer that got accepted. And yes, I viewed all 100 of them beforehand. Now, unless you enjoy pissing money up the wall, or you're extremely lucky, please, please, please make sure you view the properties. Because what you want to be making sure is there's no hidden nasties like subsidence or cracks, or even fresh paint covering damp or anything else that will affect your renovation or project down the line. Next up, pay for it. Now, you know the kind of properties you want. Now, if you know the kind of properties you want, you need to make sure you have the money ready. Now, this isn't like a normal transaction, as most auction houses expect you to proceed and exchange and complete between 7 to 28 days. Yes, that quickly. So you want to either check the side of your sofa, make sure you have enough funds in your account or your ISA ready to go, or even get yourself a bridge sorted ASAP. Now, very quickly, a bridge is a specific type of product used by lenders, ideal for short-term projects like flips or BRR projects. So if you need one, go get one. Next up, legalize it. Yes, legal packs are crucial. Get legal eyes to check over these. You want to look for covenants, easements, or any hidden fees in that legal pack. Often you'll see little things like the buyer is expected to pay for X, Y, and Z. And if you don't include these in your figures, they can really destroy your profits or your ROI. Also, some properties may have limited titles, which again is something I've come across a few times. So please get legal eyes to check over it if you have no idea what you're doing. Next up, value it. A property survey for people that are completely new to this could be useful. If you're really eager to buy something and you're very serious about it, a property survey may help you. Independent valuations, you can easily arrange these. They don't cost too much in the grand scheme of things, but they can help with your peace of mind. Next up, insure it. Now, before you purchase anything, you will be asked by your surveyors or conveyancers to have building insurance in place. So make sure you shop around and try and get the best building insurance to cover you for that particular project. Number 3, things to do during an auction. Now, although I should have probably added this maybe in the section before, I'm assuming you've done your numbers. So make sure your numbers and calculations are all done. If you watched any of my videos, you know that I'm all about numbers. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to assume you've got your numbers ready. And all I want you to do in that auction room is trust your numbers, nothing else. So let's move on to some tips during an auction. I'd recommend arriving early and getting a good seat. I usually sit where I can see everyone and just kind of scope out the room. Next thing you want to do is not be like those two jokers at the beginning of this video that you saw battling it out. Because let me tell you something, battling it out with a stranger you know nothing about because you really want to win will most likely see you lose. Next up, only bid to that number. You've done your numbers, bid to that number. But don't go in too early either. Gauge the room, see how the prices are moving before you really show your hand. Next up, chat to people. I've actually met some really great people and contacts in auction houses, such as really wealthy people. I've also met builders, and I've just met nice people that I've kept in touch with over the years. So it's a great place to potentially find JVs, tired landlords, even build that power team that you may need to take your property journey forward. Next up, proxy it. Now, if you're someone who's going to get carried away like those two jokers at the beginning of the video because you're all about winning, or your ego won't let you get outbid because it looks like you can't afford it, for example, then do a proxy bid. In fact, one of my first auction properties, I won via a proxy bid. What I actually did was set my maximum offer, and then I actually went to football, scored a few good goals. And if I remember right, when I came back and returned to my car, I got a text from my mum saying congratulations. And that was it. I had literally spent £40,000 whilst I was playing football. So maybe entertain that idea too, because what I didn't want to do was spend £50,000. Number 4, should you buy properties at auctions? Now this is kind of like an it depends answer, which I don't normally like saying, but it depends. But what I will say is that just because it's at an auction house does not mean it's necessarily below market value or that it's cheap. A lot of guide prices are so low and reserves are usually at market price, maybe a few grand below. And a lot of properties are actually thrown back into auctions having just been brought. Now this is either down to an investor looking to flip them on, or there could just be a problem property as well. So make sure you have that in the back of your head. Why is this even in an auction? So please, as I always say with anything that you do in property, do your due diligence with them. I would also state at this point, they only work out well if you have the funds ready to go. Cash is king, especially when you're looking for auction properties. A buy-to-let mortgage won't really work because we all know if you bought a buy-to-let or a residential, the timescales are so long and you're likely going to lose the 10% or whatever percent of deposit you had to put down initially and get hit with some fees. And I don't want you to do that, especially if you watch these videos and you're trying to learn about property. Don't make those mistakes. So speed of purchase is an absolute must. And finally, why investors sell at auctions? So I've entertained this idea myself, and I know as investors that when you are new to the game, or let's just say less experienced, emotion can often take over. You want deals to work out. So some investors actually do this on a full-time basis and list their properties at auctions knowing that very often they can get far more for it than if they just put it on the open market, such as placing it on Rightmove or Zoopla. I've also heard stories of investors listing their properties online having simply messed them up a little bit. Maybe messing the paint or putting the wallpaper down, for example, or lifting up a few carpets. Now this is crazy, right? And it probably sounds really stupid, but I know why. See, a lot of homes shown on Homes Under the Hammer or training courses will often tell you to buy the worst house so you can do it up. And investors savvy enough will purposely ruin a house just enough to make it look like a worthwhile project. And lo and behold, they'll often find someone using emotion over logic to go out and buy it at a dumb price, making that investor some money. And finally, investors also know that time is money, and by listing it at an auction, even worst case if you get a little bit less for it, i.e. you just about meet your reserve, for an investor being liquid at the right time or being able to get rid of an asset quick enough can be beneficial for their own strategy or goals. So this again could be another reason why investors list properties at auctions. Now, hopefully this gives you some insights into auctions, but please do use the comments below if you have any more questions or anything I may have missed out or anything else you want to know about, and I'll try my best to help you. If there's no questions or comments, I'm just going to assume this is the greatest auction video on YouTube at the minute, and it's left you all with your mouths wide open, amazed at how much information I've packed in. And if that's the case, then maybe smashing the like button and subscribing would be a great thing to do, not just for yourselves, but also for me too. And as always, thank you for sticking around. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch these videos. And now, let's roll those bloopers. But alongside auction being a hot, be reached before the offer is so assuming you got your numbers ready, then only